In today's episode, we're going to be discovering why Bitcoin decoupling from tech stocks is a big deal for crypto. Is it actually decoupling? Past couple weeks, we've seen Bitcoin go up while tech stocks, NASDAQ, S&P 500, Tesla go down, down, down like a burning ring of fire. So, find out whether you want to buy some Bitcoin, hold on to your Bitcoin, sell your Bitcoin, do nothing with Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin in this episode. Well, today I'm going to read and review another one of my stories because I got such great feedback from every one of you at home, so I thought I'd read it again. It's titled Why Bitcoin Decoupling from Stock is a Big Deal in Crypto. Boo! Did I scare you? Scarier is not knowing BitWriters, your Bitcoin-focused ghostwriting agency. They've got over 6 years experience building up blogs, newsletters, educational email courses, because not your emails, not your audience, not your customers. So, check out the link in the description below. I thought I'd write this because this is a new narrative that's gripping the whole of, media and finance. We're seeing people on CNBC say it. We're seeing Bloomberg experts. People in crypto are obviously celebrating and over the moon. Not normally the kind of moon boys that you're thinking, but people are actually over the moon because, the idea that Bitcoin was an alternative is, even though very, very short coming, is perhaps becoming a thing. Let's dive in. Tech stocks and Bitcoin. Is the correlation over? While equities have been getting walloped this week as Donald Trump's erratic policies spook investors, Bitcoin's price has remained relatively even. The top crypto is up 7% in the past week and actually rose during a rout on Monday. On Tuesday, Bitcoin continued recouping its losses from Liberation Day, rising 3.3%. That number is actually now up to 7.7 or 7% while I'm recording. So Bitcoin is now trading for 93K. Meanwhile, traditional assets shuddered and the dollar plummeted. So for those of you that might not be aware, Bitcoin as a risk-on asset usually trades inversely with the US dollar. The US dollar, there's a thing called the dollar strength index, the DXY. It's been getting wrecked since Trump took office. It's down 10 to 11%, which is pretty bad. So essentially, it's a weak dollar. Now, what's interesting about what's happening right now is that risk-on assets, like what we're seeing with the NASDAQ, tech stocks, S&P 500, tend to go down, but Bitcoin isn't going down as much as usual. In fact, it's going up, even though the China-US trade tumble and rumble in the economy today is ongoing, becoming critical. China said it was going to retaliate against allies that were helping the US. The US is just spooking everybody, saying that they're going to do this, and then the next day they're going to reverse that to do that. Nobody really knows what the fuck is going on. The art of the deal, right? But Bitcoin's outperformance to the NASDAQ throughout the US's tariff crisis this year has been striking, said Bernstein analysts in a note to investors. Bitcoin is down somewhere around 2% since January, while the NASDAQ is down something around 13%. So that's pretty impressive. Now, why does this matter, you might be asking? A fractured decoupling would have serious implications for the industry. For years, the leading crypto has moved in line with tech stocks, acting as a proxy for high-risk assets. A true decoupling would offer a new narrative, such as that proposed by Bitcoin backers who see the cryptocurrency as digital gold. That means Bitcoin is acting not as a risky tool for speculation, but instead as a hedge against currency debasement, inflation, and turmoil. Right now, we're actually seeing that it could be potentially protection against the Fed's independence. For those that are listening in, Trump has publicly said that he wants to remove Jerome Powell, old Jay Powell, from the Federal Reserve chair to put somebody friendlier to him in power. That would be a massive fuck up because it would just show that there's no separation of powers in finance in the US. In fact, that's exactly what is pushing, or that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is actually being able to defend itself. But it's interesting that now we're finally getting to see a side of Bitcoin that Bitcoin advocates for years have been saying, that Bitcoin is going to one day decouple. Now, something that Eric Balchunas, Bloomberg ETF expert, did point out that I think is important, because obviously I put it in my article, otherwise I would have left it out, is it's obviously a ridiculously small time frame, the week, but gotta get these small wins if it ever wants to be considered a true alternative. It's like sort of small building blocks, you know? And this is something I got into a discussion today with my dad about this. It was like, it's too soon to tell. We're never going to know. Yes, but these are like the small building blocks that lead to the eventual true decoupling, if it's ever going to come. Maybe this is a couple weeks ago, Bitcoin was delayed in its drop while NASDAQ and all big techs and traditional equities dropped on a Friday. Bitcoin stood its ground, and then Sunday, crash and burn. But so maybe it's that. But these are like small hints, shooting stars, things that appear that say, maybe there's something here. It's like the first time, perhaps, I wasn't there, when Bitcoin hit $1. People were like, nah, it's going to go down, it's going to go down. Sure, but it was the first test of $1 before it eventually moved up. Same as 100, same as 1,000, etc. Maybe this is the first of many things to come. Now, what's even more interesting is what CNBC was saying. Bitcoin has decoupled, obviously, from the NASDAQ, which was a trend for a while, said CNBC's anchor Scott Wapner. But Bitcoin's new trading pattern is something that has been taking place only recently. In fact, earlier this month, Bitcoin was trading in tandem with stocks, just not seeing the big pops and drops investors are accustomed to seeing, said Tanaya McKeel, also CNBC, I think Business News. What's more, Bitcoin hasn't been able to catch up with the market standout performer, which is gold. Gold's been on a fucking rocket ship. It's up 6 to 7%. It soared over 3,500 for the first time. Then it dipped. Now when I wrote this, it was at 3,370. Things to keep in mind. Whoops. Now would be a good time for you to subscribe. Now, for Machil, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, there's two reasons behind Bitcoin's price action. Number one, the obvious and easy narrative would be Bitcoin acting as a hedge against political uncertainty, she said, pointing to Trump's public pressure to remove old J-Powell, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, which would not be good for the markets, as we saw. Like Arthur Hayes was saying today, J-Powell gets potentially going to get the sack. Everything rips down. J-Powell is safe, and he's not going to get the sack. Everything rips up. Things to keep in mind. But there's a second leg, said Machil. It's not just enthusiasm, it's also exhaustion. Investors want to get back into risk, just not the type that's tied to earnings or Fed policy. That's an interesting idea. So essentially, investors are looking, I guess investors are always looking for a little bit of risk, because where's the reward without the risk? You have to allocate some of your portfolio to something that's going to give you outsized returns, like crypto does, like Bitcoin does, and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting that now investors are exhausted of traditional risk. And so now they're looking for alternative risk, or riskiest, risky honest, whatever you want to call it, in Bitcoin. Now, where do I stand on all this? Like I said before, I'm going to double back on what I was saying. Bitcoin is just potentially starting to decouple. It's very early innings. It's too early to tell if this is a real trend that's breaking, if Bitcoin is going to eventually fall in line with tech stocks and traditional equities, if this is all part of the natural turmoil that's happening because of Trump's incessant trade war with China and the rest of the world. We don't know, but it's interesting. I still find it interesting that we might be starting to see snippets of what's actually happening in traditional markets, that people are getting exhausted of what they have, that people are looking for something that isn't necessarily tied to Fed policy, for something that does potentially serve as protection against inflation, turmoil, political uncertainty, the click of a button from one guy in Washington, D.C., and all that sort of jazz. I would like to know, though, where you lie. Do you agree with any of this? Do you think Bitcoin is finally turning the tide on its tandem riding with stocks? Do you think it's not? I want to let you know, I read all the comments. I comment back on all the comments, except for those pesky scam comments. I don't comment back on those. But I read on all of them. So I would love to get your picture if you think this is a real thing, if you think this is a long-lasting trend, if you think this is something that's going to continue to happen in the future, if this is just a blip on the radar on the natural path for Bitcoin to be just one more high-risk beta proxy stock, whatever the fuck that means. Essentially, if it's just a high-flying, fly-flashing alternative way to trade stock. Let me know below.